So, in light of the recent legislation in Ohio and Alabama, I just wanted to come on and kind of have a stream of consciousness talk about my views on abortion. And I'm going to try to stay respectful to both sides. And I just want to preface all of this by saying that I've never had an abortion. And personally, I don't love the idea of it. I don't think I would ever get one. But that being said, I've never been pregnant to my knowledge, so I'm coming from a place of privilege. It's never really been like a tested philosophy of mine. And most importantly, beyond that, I'm 100% pro-choice. I think that this is every person's decision to make themselves. And because it's only people with uteruses who are making that decision and living with that consequence, it's really not up to a bunch of old white guys who behind closed doors are probably being huge hypocrites, to be honest. So you have all these people making bills who really are never going to personally face this decision, and they're never going to have the ramifications of a pregnancy and having a child. So these are my thoughts on it, basically. I have had many friends have abortions, and my mom had abortions. This is something that I've grown up knowing, and you know, I took all of this in and I thought about it myself, and I came to the understanding that personally it might not be for me, but this is everyone's prerogative. So you don't have to grow up and have the same ideas that your parents instilled in you. Your community could be very conservative, and you're able to look at things and use critical thought and empathy, and you can come up with your own conclusion. And I think that's the most brave thing, is not to just go with what everybody told you, whether that's religion or conservative or liberal politics. You know, thinking about things for yourself is the best way to go. And I'm hoping that there are a few people who might be maybe on the fence about this issue, and we can kind of just like have a back and forth conversation where I'm speaking at you, sorry, but it's the format. So let's see. Why don't we take some examples? Of course, you're going to have situations where there's maybe like a 15-year-old who got pregnant with their boyfriend, and they may be in love, but they may not be in the best spot financially, and they want to finish school and they have aspirations, and a baby just doesn't fit in those plans. You could also have a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl who's gotten pregnant by rape, and this is already a really traumatic experience, and then to find out that you're pregnant is an added layer of just like a horrifying situation. And to be forced to carry that baby to term, even if the plan is adoption afterward, it's a huge stress on yourself. It could, I can't imagine going through that, but it's financially so cumbersome to have a pregnancy. Physically, it takes a toll. It's a trauma on the body. You know, being pregnant isn't easy, but the actual giving birth aspect of it, it's a trauma. People die. Like, women die from giving birth even in 2019. So it's not an easy thing to undertake by any means. And let's just go into an example that anti-abortion people, anti-choice people might think of in their heads. Let's say you have a 28-year-old. Let's say that she's even married and she's pretty financially stable. She and her husband are doing well, and she decides that she wants to get an abortion. You know, she has the means to take care of a baby. She has a stable relationship. Her career is underway. You know, she's figured her life out. She's traveled. She's gone to school. If she wants to have an abortion, like, that's best case scenario, right? It's still her decision. Like, she has the best case scenario life created for herself and her potential child, and she still decided that she doesn't want to go through with this pregnancy. That's her right. It doesn't make sense to me that people would say, I want to enforce pregnancy and birth on you. If someone doesn't want to have their baby, that means that they wouldn't probably be the best parent to that baby. It means that it's not something that they want for themselves. Why would you want someone to be forced to live a life that's not true? To me, this is the same kind of mentality as people who say, let's put you in conversion camp. You don't have to be gay. This is against God's will. Let's get that out of you. Why would you want someone to live a lie and be unhappy with their life, you know? We get one life, is what I believe, and we should spend that time making ourselves happy and hopefully having the fortitude and the energy and the compassion to make other people's lives better around us. The way I see it, the world has too many people already. I wish that everyone who is alive today would have a great life and be fulfilled and happy and live with like freedom and enough food, and they could find love. I hope that everyone has a great life. That being said, that's not the case. There are millions of people who are like food uncertain and living in poverty. And if you care so much about the sanctity of life, I'd love to hear about all the like volunteer and charitable work that you're doing for people in Syria or Venezuela. I would love to hear about how even at home there's food scarcity. People are living, in food deserts, and there's so many kids in foster care. So let's take care of the people who are alive, not some clumps of cells, is my opinion on it. And I see a lot of men, and they're usually straight white guys, and they hop online and they voice their opinions, and they're so vocal. And it's funny how the most like gung-ho people tend to be the most misinformed, or the ones that are just ill-qualified to give their opinion. Like here you have women and medical professionals who are saying this is a horrible idea, this ban, making it a felony to have an abortion. 6 weeks isn't enough time to know that you're pregnant in many cases. I've seen tons of comments from women saying that they continued to have a period until the 4th or 5th month of their pregnancy. They didn't have symptoms. Maybe like their boobs were a little bit tender at some point, or maybe not, but they were continuing to get their period. They didn't realize what was going on. It just seems really backwards and entitled, to be honest, to see comments from men who won't experience this saying, this, that, and the other thing, shame on these women. I don't see how it's all the woman's fault. It takes 2 people to get pregnant, right? Like best case scenario, it was consensual, it was adults, mistakes happen. I've heard of people who are on multiple forms of birth control and the condom maybe broke, and for some reason the pill didn't work, or even an IUD can be faulty. So there are people who are very responsible and they still find themselves pregnant. There's also instances of rape. There are also instances of, hey, it was Friday night and I met a guy that I liked and shit happened. People make mistakes. I don't think that someone should have to have the biggest responsibility in the world put on them permanently because they made a mistake. They got pregnant. They don't want to be pregnant. They shouldn't have to follow through with that. You shouldn't be a parent because of an unplanned happenstance, right? If everyone who made a mistake had to deal with the lifetime ramifications of that, many, many people wouldn't be in the place of privilege that they're in, that they're now spouting off their idealistic stuff on other people. I think it just comes down to whether or not you are pro-choice or not. It's everyone's decision to be made themselves. It's a personal decision between a woman and her healthcare provider. I don't think it's anybody else's business. Whatever their reasons for it, I was really lucky. I came from a place where we were taught, I think in middle school, about safe sex practices, and I always had access to birth control, even when I was living in my RV, even when I was very part-time working, low income. I had Planned Parenthood, and they are a wonderful organization who does lots of things besides abortions. I was able to get the Nexplanon in my arm, and that was a so-so experience for me. It made me gain a lot of weight, and it gave me headaches, and I was hormonal. But that being said, it did its job. I didn't get pregnant for 3 years, so that's amazing. Thank you, Planned Parenthood, and the taxpayers, and wherever that came from. I really appreciate it because, I don't know, it's an amazing thing to be able to have that, and not everybody does. We were given condoms after school when I was in high school. Our health center would have that. So we were all, from a young age, taught to be sex positive and to be, realistic about it. Teenagers are going to have sex, and we were taught to be responsible as much as they could. They told us that, this was something that we had agency over, and I think that that's great, but not everybody's in that position. There are still places in the country that are abstinence only. Kids have questions like, can they get pregnant from having oral or butt sex? People are misinformed, grossly misinformed, and Some people think that you can't get pregnant if it's a certain time of the month or pull out. There are all these things where, fingers crossed, that's their form of birth control because they weren't taught the truth. So even if you can get online and self-educate through the internet and actual medical resources, you can't always find birth control easily. It's not as accessible as it should be. So instead of blaming people after the fact and saying it's going to be a felony for you to get an abortion, why don't we say, I care so much about life that I'm going to make it a mission of mine. Instead of getting mad at women for making this decision, I'm going to say it's like my life's work to make sure that birth control is affordable and accessible and readily available to everyone who wants it, right? Isn't that the best way to prevent abortion? So this is just, these are my thoughts personally. I would never, regardless of my personal views, I would never want to enforce something on another person. I don't think anyone's excited about getting an abortion. They're not going out and getting pregnant on purpose and putting their body through this. And it's an emotional thing. It's a personal decision that they've come to because it's the right thing for them. And I respect women enough to say that's the decision that they want to make. By all means, that's what's right for them. I respect women enough to think that this is their choice, and I want that choice to be available to them. So that's my personal idea. And I would like to say to men out there that are watching, hi, please, if you're on the fence, or if you think that abortion is everybody's right, if you think that women should have this decision-making power, please say something. Speak out, because women can't carry it all on themselves. It's half and half population-wise. We have women, we have men. Women can't take on everything. It's the same with racism. White people need to speak out against police brutality. It's not just on the person who's being oppressed. It's the person who's coming from a place of privilege who also needs to lend a hand. So think about these issues. It's nuanced, yes, but it's also kind of black and white. It's black and white in the sense of every woman should get to make that decision themselves. End of story, right? So if you're a guy, please say something. Make a public Facebook status, start conversations with your friends. Not only will you get points from women for being an advocate and for stepping out of your comfort zone, you can have self-respect, knowing that you are standing on the side of history of safe abortions, because they're always going to happen. Pregnancies are going to happen, and the issue is now if it's going to be in a safe, well-lit, clean medical center, and the woman will not, die over this simple medical procedure, or if it's going to be like a back alley, hush-hush, coat hanger situation. You have such a history. Abortions have always happened, and in this society, it's crazy that this is even still a debate, but it is, I guess. So please, men, speak out on behalf of a woman's right to choose. And what else? It's such a large issue that I want to make sure I get everything in, and this was very stream of consciousness, but it's insane to me that we have this government that seeks to demonize normal stuff, and people care about their water supply. I just saw today that they're trying to make it a felony to protest pipelines, oil pipelines, the same as attempted murder. So you have these things like this person raped someone and this is an attempted murder, and they're trying to say that being environmentalist and protesting those pipelines, and isn't that a First Amendment right, is the right to gather, assemble, and protest peacefully? And then you have women who are using their constitutional right to choose to get an abortion, and they're trying to vilify that in the same way. It's almost like they don't want people to be able to vote, right? It doesn't make sense. I know I keep making all these comparisons that will probably make this even more niche, and maybe I should just shut up, but it reminds me of the animal agriculture gag laws. So you have ag-gag that say, don't disclose what's happening in this animal factory farm. Don't disclose the like inhumane practices and the illegal happenings. If something is illegal, you get in more trouble for exposing it and being a whistleblower than for actually doing the torture on the animal. It doesn't make any sense to me. To be honest, it seems like a lot of this has to do with just capitalism and suppressing people's rights. So I don't support it, and I plan to speak out and resist as much as I can. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry that this was a longer video, but 15 minutes, it's not terrible. Is there anything else that I didn't say? I guess I do appreciate both sides. I think it's noble that people are saying it's important to me that human life has dignity and that people are giving the best chance possible, and that they shouldn't die simply because a mother doesn't want to carry through with that pregnancy. I understand where you're coming from, but there are 7 billion people on the planet, many of whom really need help. So instead of chastising or screaming at someone for walking into a Planned Parenthood to get an abortion, I think that we need to look internally and say, why are we so fixated on this? Why do you care so much about a clump of cells or a fetus? Why are you fixated on that when there are so many kids who need a free lunch at school, or who are living in the foster system for years at a time? People don't want to adopt them. Before you throw stones, why don't you make every possible effort in earnest to help children that are already born? If you're not pro universal health care, if you're not for school lunches being made free, if you're not for these social welfare programs that help children who are already in existence, then please don't speak to me about abortion, because it doesn't make sense. We have people who are pro-death penalty, pro-war, and occupation of Muslim countries. You have people who don't want their Second Amendment rights infringed on, right? They want automatic assault rifles, and they send thoughts and prayers when a school is shut up or a theater. These are not ways to protect the sanctity of life. So if you care so much truly about human life and human suffering, please consider putting your time and energy elsewhere where it really matters, because this is not the right place and the right time. It just, once again, my views on abortion is I don't like the idea of abortion personally. It might not be for me. I've never had an abortion. You don't have to be pro-abortion to be pro-choice. I'm 100% pro-choice. That's my stance. And I'm getting emotional, I'm sorry, because I don't want teenagers and people who are less able to find alternatives for themselves because of whatever circumstance. Like, not everybody can get themselves out of state and take time off of work. Not everybody has money to do all of this to get themselves a safe abortion. And here's another thing I want to point out before leaving is you don't know everyone who's had an abortion. Not everybody's holding up a sign or making a video like this. So before you post on Facebook, think about the fact that it could be your sister or your neighbor or your classmate or someone that you dated. One of my best friends had an abortion while married, and her husband didn't know. So he turned out to be a really bad guy, and she made the right decision for herself. And it's not my story to tell, but it's the truth. And I just want to point out that before you shame people, you have no idea who's experienced this before, and you have no idea how triggering it could be. It could be a really hard decision for them. They might not regret it, but it might be a sensitive topic that they really don't want shoved back in their face. So instead of taking the responsibility as men and saying, I'm going to do my best to never put someone in this position, you know, I think that's where men should come from, is a place of empathy and care and understanding. And at very best, if it's not for you, maybe keep your opinion to yourself. But if you're anywhere in the vicinity of, I understand why someone would do this, and I want people to have the right to do this safely, you know, we don't want to criminalize this normal thing. If that's where you're coming from, please say something on behalf of everyone, not just because of the relationship of a woman to you. You know, just because a woman is their own person, like independent from their relationship to a man, not just because it's your sister or your neighbor or your mother, whoever it is, but because they're their own person and this is the right decision for them. Please respect them enough to make that decision themselves. And that's my views on abortion. Thank you for listening. This is making me want to make more videos. What topics should we cover next?